with my good friend, Dr. Maggie Augustyn. Right? Did I say Augustyn right?
You did.
Okay. And this is a treat because this is not our normal podcast. This is us jamming in the sandbox. Why did you want to join me in the sandbox today, Maggie?
You're one of my favorite people to talk to. You're one of my favorite people to riff with. You and I can go on for a very long time talking about very deep, multi-dimensional, spiritual and philosophical things. And every time we leave a conversation, I feel a deeper dimension to life. And I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful for it. And it leaves me wanting more. And so I've been really looking forward to this for a really long time.
No pressure. No
No
pressure.
pressure.
I just feel like I see life better and I get this other dimension. So there's dimensions right now, everybody. And I don't know. I think part of it is I love what's real and I love talking about what's real with people that are courageous enough to look at it. And I remember when I interviewed you for the Innovation in Dentistry podcast before my rebrand. I remember just being shocked because here you were, this meteoric rise in dentistry. Just when it comes to speaking engagements, it seemed like just favor on your life. Like all of a sudden you're in a, article here being featured. You're writing articles. All these things are going great, and yet you also have no problem talking about this darkness that was looming, that was around the corner, and just sharing about reality. And I loved that, Maggie. Can I call you Maggie?
Always.
Okay. Didn't want to show any disrespect to those people. I know Maggie is a doctor. She's a dentist. She's an amazing dentist. Um, but yeah, I just really appreciated that about you. One of my friends, one of the things he told me, because I was asking him, I was like, I did this unique ability exercise, and I was like, what do you see might be unique about me? And he's like, Sean, every single time we get together, I can't wait to tell you how I'm crushing it and everything that could look good about my life. And you have no problem just sitting in areas where you're also struggling and just being so honest and vulnerable in a way that encourages me. And I was just like, isn't that common? Like, isn't that just normal? But I realized it's not normal. But it is when we get together. And that's what I appreciate your intellectual honesty.
Thank you. Um, I, we all see each other differently than how other people see us. And I get told every now and again that I'm brave. And I certainly don't look at myself as being brave. I'm really tired of pretending. I'm really tired of pretending to be something that I'm not. And so what people when people say you're so authentic or you're so brave, that's just me being sick and tired of having to go another day pretending to be something that I'm not, which I feel like I have needed to do for probably, I don't know, 30, most of my life, where I've had the option of choosing how I present to the world. I'm not going to count, the first maybe 10 years of my life because I don't know how much of an option I had there. But yeah, but it's not about necessarily choosing to be authentic or anything like that. I just want to be free. I just want to be free, and I'm lucky, to be free because not everyone has that opportunity. I have people in my life, both at work and at home, that allow me to live life as free as I can.
I think this is a great starting point because it gets to a little bit of the heart of what we're wanting to talk about anyway. And I don't think I knew, obviously, I didn't know you a decade ago, Maggie, that showing up real wasn't something that came automatic. It was something you had to fight for, it was something you had to wrestle with. And and I love that because I feel like the things that we've had to wrestle with, the things that we actually have to face, and the challenges, whatever comes through some aspect of suffering is not easily lost. A new mindset that comes without a price can easily be won and easily be lost the second the winds change, the second the trends change. But something that was fought for and won in the trenches, where you really had to grapple, where you know what uh, it means to feel like you have to hide, maybe to feel trapped in a portrayal that isn't you. It wasn't liberating. Um, what was it? What was that like?
So I was about to graduate from dental school, and this, well, maybe a little bit further. We're 6 weeks away from taking our boards. And I wasn't always making very good decisions. And so I didn't hold the buffalo knife the right way when I was trimming a model, and I shoved the knife straight into the palm of my right hand 6 weeks before boards. And I had to go to the emergency room and get stitches in my hand. And I had to be, the protocol was that I needed to be accompanied by a colleague. And I remember going to the emergency room, and the doctor said what kind of medication I was on. And at the time, I was on antidepressants, and I could not have somebody hear what I was on. So I asked my colleague, who was also my friend, if she could give me the privacy with the doctor, which was really strange to ask, so that I could disclose to the doctor. Not that it really had any bearing on what kind of sutures they were going to choose to cover up my hand, but um, there was a lot of shame that was associated with the mental disease that I was suffering from. And that went by, and then several weeks went by, and my best friend, this was about 6 weeks from graduation, someone that I had considered my best friend, came up to me and said, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And this is when we're all celebrating. We have this huge graduation trip planned, our entire class. And I said, why not? And she said, well, you haven't been there for me and my friends when we're presenting our treatment plan presentations, and you're just not a very good friend. And I didn't know how to tell her that the reason why I wasn't there for her and her friends during the treatment plan presentations was because I was at home contemplating suicide. And even even a week or two later, I'd send her an email alluding to that fact. It really didn't matter. And I had many people walk away from me throughout my life because I couldn't be present, because I needed to go home and not participate in life because of how much the darkness had dragged me down, and I couldn't be open about it. And so when I came to work, or when I went to social situations, I had to pretend that that wasn't a part of my life. The only people that knew, the only person that knew, was my husband. I had to keep that hidden away from my in-laws. I had to keep that hidden away from my friends. I had to keep that hidden away from my parents. I couldn't bear to hurt my parents, or my in-laws, or my friends. And even to this day, and this is what's interesting, I was thinking about writing an article about this. In the darkest moments, when you quite literally have a noose around your neck, and people wonder, why didn't they reach out to me? Why didn't they make that call? Well, the reason is that, at least the reason for me, is that you just don't want to upset somebody else's life. You don't want to burden them with your darkness and your pain. And so, unfortunately, the angel in my life, my husband, has to carry this incredibly heavy weight. You know, he is the only one, aside from the listeners now and my doctors, that and several friends that now know after the fact, but at the time he was the only one that knew that in 2016 I attempted suicide, by, wiring up my car for poison monoxide, or for monoxide poisoning. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell my in-laws, and guess what? The next day I went to work. So you live your life so constricted by this darkness, having to pretend that you're happy, and you're like everyone else, that there comes a point where you're just so tired of pretending. And then you get this small little glimpse, which I've gotten over the last several years, that if you share a little bit of your pain, and if you share a little bit of your darkness, there's other people that feel the same way that you do. And I'm not alone. And now, because they know something about me, they're not alone. And maybe they're more likely to take that noose away from their neck, not necessarily because they're calling someone, but because they're not the only one living in that darkness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like what I'm hearing and what I'm putting together is that when we're in a place where there's darkness, for me the word is wretchedness. For me, it's not like it's it's not an actual darkness that's around me. It's an actual wretchedness that's been in me. And yet the feelings and the thoughts are like, hey, everything leads me toward isolation, and it leads me into darkness where it's like no one's going to understand. um you're just gonna, like you said, you're just gonna burden them, you're gonna weigh them down. And what happens when people are in darkness and they're isolated? Their perspective gets warped, their view of themselves gets warped, and it's like that's a perfect condition for something that, whether it's starting or whether it's like deep bondage, for something just to get worse. It's like a downward spiral.
And talk about the blame and the shame at yourself, and the guilt that you experience. So I've dealt with this my entire life. The first time I had thoughts of suicide, I was in second grade. But if this is the first time that you're feeling this, and you have a family, and my favorite place to idealize and fantasize about suicide is in the closet. I turn off the lights and I lay down on the floor, and I have a pillow there, and I just lay down and I let these thoughts disempower me, and I let them take over me, and I fight really hard not to act on them. But if this is and I'm used to it, I've dealt with this my entire life, but if this is the first time that you're dealing with them, and you are a mother, or you are a father, or you are a breadwinner, and you fought them off, and then you awaken from them, the guilt and the shame that you feel for having had them. How dare have you had those thoughts of possibly leaving your children semi-orphaned, right? And then what happens is you use that shame and that blame against yourself to further rob yourself of whatever love you deserve. And I did not expect for us to go here so quickly. And I'll be honest, part of the reason why I didn't expect, I actually didn't even know that I was going to talk about this, and I'm being guided by a higher power in all of this conversation. But I'll be honest, my daughter's 14, And my daughter doesn't know this about me. My husband and I talk about whether or not we should talk to her about me having these thoughts, and we decided we don't want her to parent me. And so she's not interested in what mom is doing. She's not interested in mom's website, so I don't think she's going to come across this podcast. But so that's partly why I've been cautious. But nonetheless, we've ended up in this place. And I don't mean to make light of it, but here we are, and so this last week has been terribly difficult for me, and I quite literally had a noose around my neck. And these thoughts that I'm describing to you, the guilt and the shame of, and the need for punishment, for the audacity of having had that thought, when most people look at my life and they said, how dare you? You have everything that anybody could possibly want in life. How dare you? Right? But what I noticed for the first time, and if you consider being in second grade at the age of 7, for the first time in 40 years, what I noticed was, as I had this noose around my neck, I was able to grant myself forgiveness because I felt led into the darkness by evil. And you and I talked about it for a short time the other day. There was a promise that the devil gave me. If I moved forward with taking my own life, there was going to be beauty on the other side. I was going to be revered and respected. I was going to be remembered. The devil gave me the most beautiful black velvet dress, and it let me dance in the moonlight. I could not describe that any more perfectly. And it would not let go. It just had this hold over me. And it's had a hold over me for the last 40 years, which is why that hold has been so tight. And generally, when I get to that point where it's so dark and I have to fight so hard, what gets me out is my husband and my daughter. My psychiatrist and therapist have told me there's very few things that do more damage to a child than a mother specifically committing suicide. That is not something that you can come back from. And I would never want to damage my daughter like that. And that usually turns me around. But in this instance, that's not the thought that came back. Not to say that my daughter and husband weren't important enough, but in this particular instance, and I can't explain to you, Sean, and maybe you can help me put this in perspective. And if there is one person that can make me understand why all these steps took place, it is you. But I walked away from the devil, from the evil, from the darkness, because I didn't want to disrespect God for giving me life. And I felt that gift of life so fully within my body, so powerfully, like it was like a lightsaber. If that was dancing in the moonlight in the beautiful black dress, then all of a sudden I turned into like a flashlight with the most beautiful beam. And that was the gift of life. And I could not break that gift. And those were like these two forces, but one was far more powerful than the other. And and when that happened, when I had the thought, God gave you life, it is not yours to take away, all of a sudden, physically, I started to vomit and cry. And I promise you, I'm not making this up. I am not one to make stuff up. Um, I just started to cry and vomit. I have never had an experience like that before in my life. And again, you and I have talked for a very long time, but I have been very lost in my faith for a very long time. I have not opened a Bible since 2016. And so this has just been this experience of saying, God gave you this gift. I have not been a devout Christian, or I grew up Catholic. This is not this this is not part of my daily routine. I don't I don't pray the Lord's Prayer every day. I mean, I believe in the higher power, and I meditate, but this was far removed from what my life normally is. Um, so that's deep, and that was fast, and
Well, just on the last point you made, though, Maggie, I'm so glad you haven't been praying the Lord's Prayer and being viewed in your own way as devout, because there's such a danger to feeling like we're righteous or holy or deserving that is a slippery road down this religious path of I can reach God. I can deserve or obtain, or it's some creepy thing with worthiness. When the reality is, we're not we're not worthy because of what we do. We're worthy because of who He made us to be. So right at the heart of it, at the deepest places of identity, you are a daughter that was formed in your mother's womb. And during that time, the Father was literally rejoicing, delighting, and like imagining and looking forward to when you would be sentient and when you would be cognitive and aware and when you actually had to grapple with free will and what you choose to do with it and how you choose to either walk with Him or not, let Him in or not, be afraid or be courageous, immerse yourself in darkness or let light in. Like He was dreaming about that. Like relationship is at the heart of everything, but it's couched on that immovable identity that you are beloved for being. You are beloved for existing, not because of what you do. And yet there's something so vile when I go, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, I deserve an audience with God because I've done the right things. I've been faithful. I've been devout. I've been whatever we think we are. And the reality is, none of us are. like there's not one person I've ever met that is worthy of the holy and beautiful one that reached down and said, "No, you can't take Maggie. No, she's not going to succumb and give in to this seduction of darkness. She's meant for more." And in that moment, when he like reached out, it's like, talk about liberation, talk about encounter, talk about experience. You were made for more. And it's not your fault that darkness has been following you, that darkness has been looming in the shadows for most of your life. That's not your fault, Maggie. And yet I'm just incredibly proud of the way that you've grappled, you've wrestled, and you didn't give up and you didn't give in. Like, tell me, how did it feel? What was the difference between this dark, seductive allure versus this light that was like I'm guessing even the purity of it was palpable.
Yes. The purity of it was palpable, but I will tell you that when the evil has a grasp over you, it it makes you forget that there's anything other than. I don't, I don't know if I can maybe
No,
even.
it'd be like an eclipse, right? Like where it literally obscures the light.
Yes, it's like you have a credit card with no spending limit and you can get anything that you want. And and there's no consequences on anything that you do, and everything is magical and beautiful. And and you can do everything wrong and not be punished. I don't know how to explain it. The the idea of the pureness didn't exist. Yes, it was eclipsed. It was forgotten. I, I had blinders on. It needed a very. I wish I could draw it for you because I was laying on the ground and in front of me was a shelf, and there was a sensation, and I think it was the Holy Spirit of something moving in front of me, and then the sensation of look, hold on, just look, you can't take this gift away. And it was like a split second. It's like, hold on, my attention was grabbed, right? And then it moved into this light, and then this love. But I had to fight. I had to fight the darkness and the beautiful dress and that shopping spree, and say, move towards love, move towards love. God is love. These others are their false promises.
But also I feel like there's an aspect of this that I think a good way of describing it is almost like dark fathering, where it's like I can provide for you, I'll take care of you, but deep down inside, there's this like, I'm not safe as a father. I might even like abuse you, but yet you're my favorite. I love you, and I'm going to take care of you. There's this weird,
It's a bait and switch, right?
completely,
I mean,
and like because it's on the surface, on the outward, with the exterior promises, it's saying it's going to satisfy, but it's slipping you poison, and yet almost like trying to rot you at the core, at your soul. Like it's that's a high cost to pay, is that you give up anything about you that truly is reflected in the divine, any light. It's almost like it's going to snuff that out and let you stay busy with seeming pleasures that don't actually last. There's no lasting impact on them.
correct. Yes, but you don't know that,
No, because surrounding you, it's like this facade
right?
where it's like this fantasy where it seems all beautiful. But that's I feel like how the on ramp to most of what is dark is. It's slippery. It's seems so smooth, and it promises this appeal of whatever, and then all of a sudden you engage in it, and you see behind the curtain, and it's torment, it's
And sometimes
bondage,
and
it's
some yeah, and sometimes they'll have an entourage, right? Of others that are helping onboard you there. I mean, that wasn't my experience on this, but very often this idea of evil, what made me start thinking about evil when I initially reached out, and that was another idea that we thought about, is there's this show called Evil, and one of the things that they talk about is how misinformation happens. And it's not so much about political misinformation, it's the idea that when you send out any kind of information, you really turn people against one another, and you turn towards hate and away from love. And because really the two forces that are in play all the time are love and lack of love, right? Is the beauty of love and light, and the lack of love and light. And so And when you move towards evil, you're moving away from love, but there's an allure of these other things. Except even in the way that we live life, we replace love with things, with materialistic things, with phones and with cars and with success, or what we think success is, right? And we move further and further away from love. There's this really great book that I read a little while back, which is The Hypothesis of Happiness. And it talks about how we are willing to buy a bigger house further away from our job to increase our commute, to spend less time with the people that we love. But we say we do it for the people that we love,
Mm.
right? We're willing to work longer hours to pay for that house that we don't spend any time in. We're choosing materialistic things at the expense of love. And that's how I mean, even the way that companies are run, loyalty, how much does that mean anymore? How much does our word mean anymore? It just, this world is moving further and further away from love.
When there's something about the pace and the noise, the busyness and the loudness that I think are also very contrary to love. And I think it is Psalm 23 where it says, He makes me to lie down beside the still waters so He can restore my soul. To think that that was written in a different day and age when there
Mm.
wasn't internet and phones and cities where it's just noise, 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 ads, ads, lights. When you hear business analysts now saying attention is the new oil and it's all about attention, I think there's something beautiful about the fact that God hides himself in obscurity to see who actually wants life. He doesn't shout from the rooftops. He doesn't do ad campaigns where he's trying to scream at people and say, "Worship me, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest." He's in the still small voice. You see him in the sunrise and the sunset if you want to. Or you can just say it's a sunrise and a sunset. When you're seeing a newborn child and the purity of that, or you're seeing something out in nature and the beauty of animals or the simplicity of birds he's whispering through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he's not forcing himself on anybody.
No, God could be in the drink of water that you take when you're thirsty, if you're willing to look for it there. You're right, and we are too busy to look for the sunset and the sunrise. We say we'll look at it tomorrow because today we have to pay attention to something else. And I am so, 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 so very guilty of that, which is why and how my life has become so unbalanced, that I have been so very easily penetrated by the promises of the lack of love. I have been moving away from love and moving towards accolades and promises of successes and chasing, and I am addicted to achieving. I am addicted to achieving and to growth. And I have to find a way, we all have to find a way to balance our life. And simply talking about it is not enough.
Okay, so can I actually invite you into something right now then?
Okay?
Okay. So let's just slow it down in this moment. And I agree. Like it's not enough to think the right thoughts about God. There's something different. It'd be like reading a book about your husband or reading a book about your daughter, but never actually getting to experience their presence. And you could say, "Oh no, I know all about Scott." I don't know if we're allowed to name him. I know all about my family, but you don't. You've never actually been in their presence. And yet, even now, to me, one of the most, again, I love the word scandalous when it comes to God. If there's anything that's ever filled my spirit, Maggie, it's this. It's the truth that I want to just drop right now. And that is that right now, in this moment, he sees you and he delights in you. And if you just rest in that, and if you just receive that and actually yield into that, not because of your accolades, and it's okay that you have ambition and accolades and that you're imperfectly in this moment. That's okay. As a father would delight in his child, I delight in my kids, and I'm a wicked father compared to him. And yet he dreams over me and has nothing but good thoughts and sees my good and sees who I'm called to be and what he's done in me that's beautiful and glorious. And even in moments when I am weak and broken and sinful, when I look at him, I know he looks back at me and he will delight in me because I just, I don't know how to describe it, but that breaks off all the striving. That breaks off all the, it like, it like shakes us out of the pace and the monotony and what's fake, and all of a sudden just lands us with this audience of the eternal, knowing that you're seen. Now, I experienced that for the first time in high school, Maggie, where it was a Friday night. I was supposed to be going out because that's what you do every Friday night. You go out with your friends. You busy yourself with something stupid to make you feel good, dopamine, whatever. And instead, I just felt this yearning to just go into my room, open up my Bible, light a candle. I love candles. Um, Open up the windows. It was probably October, which is the most romantic month in New Hampshire. The crisp air is coming in, and all of a sudden, it just dawned on me. His eyes searched to and fro throughout the earth, looking for a heart that is his, looking for a heart that's open. And my heart was open. All I had to do was say yes. And all of a sudden I realized I had an audience with like the creator of the universe. Not because of anything special, not because of anything I'd done, but simply because thankfully we have heart, we have a spirit. And all we have to do is say yes. All we have to do is respond to the invitation. Like it is so crazy because for me to earn an audience with a dignitary or a president or someone that's rich and famous, I have to hustle. I have to know someone. I have to earn it. Well, I have to share why my credentials or my resume or what is it about me that deserves to be in such glory. And yet the God of heaven's like, how about I knock and you just open to me? Like no one even needs to know. It's just me and you. And I just want to let you know that I love you. And I'll just hold you if you let me. But why do we not let God hold us? Because we feel despicable. We feel wretched. We feel undeserving. And truly, he must know that in our darkest moments, we're so, so vile that how could, because human love is tit for tat. Human love is let's get on the scales, let's measure things out, and let's see if you've earned it. Let's see if you deserve the treat. Very Pavlovian, right? Mm-hmm. You do something, you earn it. You do well, the marketplace rewards you. It's very much earning, striving. And yet, God's love isn't like that at all. We can come completely a mess. That's why it's so much more of like a father and a son or a father and a daughter. And that's why the prodigal son story is like, he goes off believing this lie, wastes his whole dad's inheritance. And yet the father is still on the horizon looking every single day. When is he going to come back? When is he going to come back? Why? So he can say, hey, what the heck was wrong with you? Why did you do that? Man, you're just such a screw up. Is that what happened? No, he ran out when he was just afar off, ran over, embraced him, put a robe on him. He was covered in like pig crap. He was like almost unrecognizable because of how low he had stooped away from the family, away from the way of life. And yet the Father just embraced him with open arms. It's like the first step back to God is always receiving. And that's why the one thing I want to say always is like, People don't know how beautiful they are. You don't know that you're beautiful and you're glorious and you're brilliant until you allow God to actually look at you and be like, I'm proud of that one. I love the way I made you, the way I made you think, the perspective I gave you. And a lot of, my kids sometimes it's like, Dad, well, how come I'm not taller or more attractive, or I don't have a better this or better that? And I'm like, you know what? It's oftentimes the people that are the most gifted in the natural that are the hardest time opening up their hearts to God because the world praises them. So imagine, you're God and you're trying to make these humans that you want to have a relationship with, and if you give them a voice like the world's never heard before, or a gift like Bach or Beethoven, or the mind of Einstein, what happens? The world praises them. They get applause, they get success, they get fame and fortune. And a heart like that it's hard for that heart to still hear the still small voice. It's typically those that have been rejected, those that are like, what the heck? Like, man, I've been down and out, I've been pushed down, I've wrestled with the fact that when I look in the mirror, I know that I'm wretched, and yet I'm given something that I don't deserve, which is a second chance. I'm given mercy when I didn't deserve mercy. I'm given grace when I don't deserve it. There's this thing called forgiveness, which means I can actually be like separated from the deeds I've done that are just despicable. I don't deserve that, Maggie. You know my story. My story got tons of wretchedness in it. And yet that's not who I am.
Because of forgiveness and God's love.
Yeah. The free gift of just receiving what I did not deserve.
Or because you did deserve it.
I mean, I deserve it in the sense that, like, my son deserves to be held because he's mine. He belongs to me, and he will always belong to me. But it doesn't mean the actions he did deserved me loving him. It's just his essence. It's his being. It's who he is. He's of my flesh. He's of me. Like, my son and daughter, I love them no matter what they do. I may not always enjoy them, but I always love them.
You have this, I've told you this many times before, you have this incredible gift. One, you have the gift of seeing the beauty in other people. And then the other gift that I have discovered since January is you are just this true conduit of communicating the Father's love. Are these the gifts that have resulted in as a result of your wretchedness and forgiveness? Has this come through as a result of that? I don't know that I've ever asked you that before. This emotion, this rawness, this beauty, this love, this passion, the language, the truth that you speak, is it the result of your past? Is this the gift that has come from it?
Yeah, I believe so. It says, he who has been forgiven much loves much. But it's hard to get that, Maggie, because you could take it like, well, if I've been forgiven a lot, that means I've really screwed up. So I'm aware of the fact that I keep messing up. No matter how hard I try, I'm a hopeless hypocrite. Why do I keep trying? Why get up another day if I'm just going to fail again, hurt the people I love? That's a narrative. That's real.
For
So
some,
is the strategy, hey, go out, screw up a ton, sin a ton, F up, and you're just gonna know that you're the delight of the Father? No. But when you
I,
actually, go ahead.
I think that's when you're not being honest with yourself. I think that when you're not truly seeking forgiveness. I think that when you're, I don't think that when you don't hold true shame and true guilt and don't think that you actually deserve forgiveness, then yeah, maybe. But when you hold true shame and when you hold true guilt and when you truly don't think, I know this, when you don't think you deserve to be forgiven because of your sins, and they forgive you anyway, I mean, I know your story, but my husband is a freaking angel. To live with someone like me. The other day, he knew how I was feeling, and I needed to go into the garage, and I just got these glasses, and I needed to use a Dremel to adjust them because they were too long. And he followed me to the garage, and I know why he followed me to the garage, because he was scared. And it's been 8 years. Can you imagine living in fear of losing your wife? Right? Like, he doesn't deserve that. I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did. And I don't deserve forgiveness for the thoughts that I keep having. But he's with me.
And that's the beauty of it, is that it's not about what we deserve. Like you said it, it's when that divine exchange happens and we actually say, guilty. Like, I am completely guilty of being vile, a wretch. Like, the natural human tendency is to say, well, why? You know what? Everybody does it. Everyone screws up. Like, it's not a big deal. Let me just downplay it. Because if I somehow call it out or acknowledge it, what does that mean? That means at the identity level, it means defective. I mean, shame, the literal definition of shame is wrongness of being, Maggie. So if that tries to attach at the identity level, no wonder why people don't want to own that. Who wants to own the truth that there's just something wrong with me in the way that I exist at the dimension and level of being? And God's like, no, 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 no. You might have partnered with sin. You might have partnered with darkness. You might have yoked yourselves with it in that moment and participated. But I came to set the captives free. And just because you're in captivity doesn't mean you are a captive. You are a son and you are a daughter. And that speaks of identity. And identity, it cannot be changed. The second like my son can never stop being my son. My daughter will never not be my daughter. I don't care what they do. The second they say, Dad, the second they turn and say, Dad, you bet I'm going to be there. I'm going to pick them up. I'm going to clean them off and I'm going to embrace them and let them know they are worthy of my love. And I'm not a good father. Like, I'm not some exceptional guy. And that's in my human flawed capacity to love. That's in me.
How do you how do you how do you keep coming back in your wretchedness to a point, in your wretchedness, in your guilt, and your feeling of undeserving forgiveness? How do you find your way back to feeling worthy of his love and understanding and feeling like he is delighted by your presence?
So something wretched happens. I partner with it. And what the lie would be, what the demons or devil or darkness would be saying is, oh, look, if you come into the light, you're going to be exposed, that you're a fraud, that you're a fake, and he's not going to be happy with you. He's going to be so disappointed. You need to run from him. You need to hide. And if you're ever running from God and you're hiding, you feel this disconnect with your soul, because the love of your soul, you're meant to be one with God. We came from God. We're meant to be one with him. That when we're not, there's this natural angst. But what do? Is we try to rationalize and think of some story. Well, what's wrong with God? Why wouldn't he just accept me for the way that I am? Because sometimes we own it too much. We own it at the level of identity. Well, you don't understand. I'm just a forsaken sinner. This is just who I am. And the thing that I've learned to do, Maggie, is I've literally learned through imagination, through is to place myself before God and just let him love me back to life. I literally trust that in the moment, no matter what I did, I'm like, you know what? I'm wretched. I literally am like vile. But when I look at the cross and I understand what the blood of Jesus does, he doesn't have to die again for me. He already did it. He already appropriated that. So all I have to do is receive. And the lies try to come. Oh, like, he died for you. The least you could do is try to be good. The least you could do is live righteous and stop screwing up, Sean. Don't you know how tired he is of you just failing and screwing things up? That's not the voice of my father. My father's like, son, I got you. So I just let him love me. I let him tell me that I belong to him. Because belonging, the deeper we have that sense of belonging, nothing can convince us otherwise. When you know that you belong to God, when you belong to the Father, when a husband knows, like when a wife knows that she belongs, like in love to her husband, like when you're confident in Scott's love for you, you show up completely different. It's like you have a little bit of a swagger, like, hey, I know you love me. You want to spoil me. You want to, like, I don't know. There's just this beautiful confidence. I don't need to run from God. Oh wow, I almost. I don't know, Maggie. I don't know when I'm going to open up about all the details, but let's just say, my wife is a saint. Your husband's a saint. My wife's a saint, and I can take what happened and I can try to minimize it, and I can try to be like, well, you don't understand. Like, tons of people screw up. But I rob Kelly of receiving the gift of the fact that she loved me when it was so hard to love me. And you know what that becomes to me? It becomes an anchor in my soul of she loved me when I didn't deserve it. She loved me unconditionally when I was selfish, I was a betrayer, I was wretched, and yet she still loved me. So now, little things happen. Do you think she forgave me for the worst thing ever? Do you think I can't, like, does that make sense? So it's like if I say, look, my hands would have been the hands nailing in the nails to Jesus. I would have been the centurion or the guard that was putting him on the cross. I have no problem seeing that I could have crucified Jesus. If I can own that, nothing I can do on this earth is going to be worse than actually crucifying like the Lord. So anything I like, he forgave me for that. What would he not forgive me of? And I have confidence in that. But you have to do the work and actually take the time and just sit before him and let love transform you.
Yeah. We've spent some time in therapy this year. I've been out of balance, and I prioritized achieving over our marriage. And one of the things that we learned in therapy is you just always have to come from a place of love. And the exercise that you do as you're about to lose your marbles because the dishes aren't done is you look at your husband, you look at your wife, and you think, this is the human, this is the person that I love. And so however I respond in this moment should be a representation of how much I love this person and what they have done for me. Now, it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you come back the next day and you try and make it work over and over again, and you just rinse and repeat, and you do the best that you can, but you're right. And then you ask forgiveness again, because you might have lost your marbles because the dishes weren't done, or the laundry wasn't folded, or whatever it is that wasn't done. But in terms of receiving God's love, one of the things that someone that we both know, Kelly Burns, has been my trauma therapist this year also, as I'm trying to heal myself. Um, and one of the actionable steps that I can give your listeners is, when you feel wretched and when you feel unlovable, one of the things that you can do is to lay down with your child and to feel the love that you have for them, which in my book, really the love between a child and a parent is the only unconditional love there is. That's just my opinion. I don't, someone else's opinion is,
I'll go with you on that one.
yeah, I mean, and it's okay. It's just my opinion. But that love that you have for them, imagine that love being given onto you from the Father. And you heal in that, and you can actually feel that. It's a very bizarre, almost like a multiverse thing. It's a bizarre perception, but you can feel that. It's kind of like a triangle thing. It goes from the top, it goes through you in one direction onto your child. And then the other thing that I've used a lot when I feel wretched and guilty and undeserving of any kind of forgiveness for the sins that I have done is to this, and this is actually what Kelly and I did, and Kelly is also the name of your wife, is to imagine myself being, I don't know why this just works for me, being held, like imagine these enormous palms, like bigger than the size of the globe, like God's palms, and you're the only one that's on them, and you just are rested there, and he looks down on you, and you're just loved in these palms, and that's all you feel, and nothing else, there's nothing else exists, just these palms and his love and you. And those are the two things that are actionable, that I have learned through therapy and reading and meditation and prayer, that help me feel more lovable, right? I can't always call you and be like, hey, talk me through this. Use your gift um, to tell me that I'm less wretched. But those are the two things that I can use in my everyday practice to make myself feel like I'm worthy of getting through another moment. Do you
Uh,
have something like that?
well, yeah, I was going to say the first one reminded me of, I think it's a good strategy if you're a parent and you have kids and you get frustrated with them. And, um, if it's, especially if it's a trying day, one of the things I'd love to do is just kind of go in their room after they've fallen asleep and just see them as they're sleeping, and just, it's like no matter how much frustration I might have, it's like I just see this little person, and I know they're trying. Like they don't want to be a little shit. Like they're just a great kid
Mhm.
that doesn't know how to cry out for love at times because they're immature. No big deal. And I just imagine at times God stares at me when I'm sleeping and he's just like, I know he's trying. I know he's trying. And I don't know. It's like when I think of, again, the roots of rejection versus belonging, if at the root you feel rejection, then it's like the yoke you're under is striving. It's everything's contrived. Everything has to do with, am I good enough? Can I earn? Can I perform well enough? And there's a continual angst, a continual um, pressure and anxiety to be or try to become something that would be worthy of not being rejected, right? Where if at the core of our identity and in the heart, if there's actually like belonging, and you start from that place, well, it's like, what can you do wrong? Just dance. Because I now know I am delighted in, I'm an expression of the Father's light, of his love in a human form that's never been made before. I'm one of a kind. You're one of a kind. Every person listening to this is one of a kind because of the unique combination of their DNA. And at the very heart of it, if we can lean into that sense of belonging, then it's like we get to just be the gift that we were meant to be the gift that we can give to the world, and receive the gift that other people are. And it's like, Maggie, it's so key what you were saying earlier. When you've walked through the process of owning your shit and then receiving forgiveness, when someone else is struggling, when someone else is doing something or they're even unjust to you, it is so much easier to extend compassion.
Yep.
It is so much easier to extend mercy because you know the extent of which you've received mercy. And and that's why when someone is incredibly critical of other people, you can often tell it's not very deep the ways in which they've encountered love. So I have compassion on them. It's like, oh, I want them to know it's not this game about, oh, I'm so much better than everyone else because I don't struggle. I figured it out. You know, I wake up at 4 a.m. I cold plunge. I meditate. I'm just a freaking robot.
You
Like,
cold plunge at 4 a.m.?
no, I'm just joking about like the trendy stuff that, all the people that are crushing it, and that's all we're trying to show people is that we're just these amazing people, and it's like no one's kidding each other. Like we all struggle with the same things, and your darkness manifested its way in a very serious way, where it's actually coming after your life. The darkness around me was never something that was towards suicide, and yet it doesn't make it better or worse. I like the temptations or the things that I'm naturally disposed to do that might be bad or whatever. Everyone has their own thing, um, and that's kind of what unites us all. It's like we're all in this adventure as humans, and yet it would just be wonderful if we could just like love each other, empower each other, elevate each other, and just shine whatever measure of light we've been given.
There's a book that helped me get through a lot, and it's called Proof of Heaven. And it's written by a neurosurgeon that crossed to the other side. And what makes this book unique, different than others, is that this neurosurgeon's brain was being monitored the entire time that he was crossed over to prove that his brain was actually not creating any
Mm.
any brain waves while he was crossed over, and that's why it's called Proof of Heaven. But his life has changed entirely as a result of that, and so he came back, and one of the things that he says is, it's just so beautiful, is the message from the father that he remembers the most is that you can do no wrong, which is a message that we really tell our children all the time. I mean, like, think about a 2-year-old that like messes up the living room or like jumps off the couch and gets a bloody nose. It's like, okay, yeah, you messed up, but you can do no wrong. And there's a reason why, I'm not here to preach. I haven't been to the other side. I haven't met anybody that's been to the other side, but I do believe in a multiverse or whatever it is that you want to believe. I believe there is more than what we see and feel. And I think the reason that people return from the other side and they lead entirely different lives is because they no longer doubt love. And if we don't doubt love, if we don't doubt that we are loved, life opens up in an entirely different way. That's why children that don't feel loved grow up to be such broken humans, right? Um, all we need is love, according to the Beatles. But really, that's just always going to be the solution. I read a book about negotiations. The best way to negotiate, and it depends on what you're interested in a negotiation, is to sit next to one another as
Mm.
opposed to oppose from one another. Like when my husband and I go out at dinner, My favorite thing is to sit next to him, not opposed from him. I really want to sit next to him, not opposed from him. When I'm having a serious discussion with someone from work, one of my team members, I don't sit across from them. There's just that does not show love. It depends what you're trying to do, right? Are you trying to have a negative connotation? Are you trying to show dominance? Are you trying to show power? Are you trying to communicate love and connection? Oh, I'm gonna bust out my chapstick too.
But it's this idea like we're all in this together,
Yes.
and there's this like harmony in it. Um, and that's where it's like I would just challenge people like, um, I heard on a podcast that I've said this a few times recently, but no one's listening. No, I'm just joking. Eric Weinstein, I think that's his name. He said that his conviction is not everybody has heard their own voice in their head, and that really struck me. Um,
What does that mean?
I think, well, what it meant to me was we've been so conditioned. There is so much noise. There's so much culture around what we should do that it's almost like we've just been programmed to respond to the rhythm that the world is, playing. This is the broad path. This is the path that you need to follow. It's what you need to do for acceptance, fit in, don't speak up too much, follow whatever someone else has done that's successful, model,
Mhm.
model, model. Um, and yet I'm just like, no, like go on the path that's only for you to walk. And I don't mean that in some weird spiritual way, but I mean like, I genuinely believe we're all called to be explorers and pioneers. And there's some measure of frontier, not in the natural, but in some other dimension that really is for us to discover and find, and invite other people into. And your heart is the compass. And the more you align yourself with who you are and who you're called to be, and you start from that place of belonging, then you will actually hear those little nudges of where you're supposed to go. And again, it's a journey, it's an adventure of a lifetime that only only trust in God can actually get you there. Because trust is also like the compass. Like it's beyond what makes sense. It's not logical. It's not um, from A to B a straight line. Um, there's no guarantees. It's going to require risk, and chances are you'll screw up along the way. Who's down for that?
There there's trust and there's okay, so what I find incredibly wonderful about my life right now, I don't know how this happened, and I'm so tremendously grateful, is that every room I walk into in this new life that I have started in the last, I don't know, several years, I meet these people that are deeply spiritual, that feel and understand and spread and give and connect through the love of God deeply. And it's so interesting because it's kind of like when we started the podcast. There is no we don't talk about the weather. And it's someone that you could meet and within 5 minutes, boom, we drop and we talk about things that are so much bigger than chapstick, right? Or the weather or vacation. I went to the AGD and I love the Academy of General Dentistry. I'm going to boast here. I just passed my fellowship exam. I studied for it for 2 years.
Way to go, Maggie.
Um, I cannot believe I passed, but I ran into a guy there, and during one of our breaks, we were eating lunch, and he kind of pulls up a chair and we start talking. And he's like, "Where do you practice? How many chairs do you have? How many assistants?" And I kind of look at him, and I'm not trying to be rude, and I'm like, "I'll finish off this conversation, but you are not my people." Like I could not care less what composite you use. I mean, I love dentistry. I really, really, really do. but I'm much more interested in your family, in your spirit, what makes you happy, what books you're reading. I don't care how many chairs you're running, right? Like I mean, professional development course we could go to if I'm interested in that, but that is not what I want to talk about at lunch. So I leave rooms like that. But there's this thing that happens when you begin to wholeheartedly accept God's love into your heart, that it just begins to pour out of you, and it and you just find people, or they find you, and you begin connecting with them, and it's like you've known them many lifetimes, right? I mean, like, you and I met once, had kind of a sort of a conversation where I maybe sort of thought you might have been Kirk Cameron. And then we had another conversation, and boom, it just dropped right in it. And since then, we've never talked about the weather. There's always been, it's always been interwoven with God's love. And then our spouses met, and we all had, and again, there was no talk about weather, right? We talked about very deep and important and spiritually driven things. Once you open your heart to what truly matters in life, things like where you went on vacation, or what Prada sunglasses are you going to buy next? I don't even know if Prada's in anymore, but and these things just become so unimportant. And I feel so sad for people that live their lives like that. Like, I really do. There's a lyric, I think, that I think, oh, it's not Barry Manilow. Barry Manilow never would have said that. It's a really popular. Who is the best guitarist ever known, other than Prince?
I don't know Prince plays. I know Eric Clapton's played. I know Santana.
Um, I feel so like rich people are so. Oh man, I shouldn't be doing this on a podcast.
No, this is really good. This is no
Um,
fact check.
yeah. Like, I feel so bad for rich people because they don't realize how poor they are.
It was the lyric said something to that effect.
Yes. Oh my! I'm gonna Google who the greatest guitarist is, because that's who it was.
I mean, I think there's something to be said about that, and that's where it's like
Jimi Hendrix.
Oh yes. but I love the point, and I think that goes back to even in the very beginning what you were saying about the black dress and dancing in the moonlight, and the shopping and the allure and the seduction. It's all very superficial. Where so I mean, this is one of the craziest lessons in all of the Old Testament is found in. I actually don't know whether it's Second Kings or anyway. It has to do with Samuel, and Samuel is like he's like the modern day prime minister, if you think of it back then, of God's people, and he's the prophet, and he pretty much is the one that's the intermediary between God and man. So super anointed, knows God better than any other man on earth at the time, and yet the people don't want. They don't want just to have a prophet. They want to have a king. Because they want to be great again, and they want to have might. So God's like, hey, I'll listen to you, people. I'll give you guys what you want. And Samuel is told to go to the house of Jesse to determine who the next king of Israel is going to be. And Jesse brings forth his finest sons to meet with this famous man, Samuel. And Samuel's looking at the oldest, and he's like, oh, he's handsome, he's got broad shoulders, he's tall. And he's like, okay, surely, God, this must be the one that you're going to anoint. And God's like, no. He's like, okay. So he goes to the next one, still handsome, not quite as much. God, surely this must be the one that you want to anoint. And God's like, no. And he goes on down the line, and God didn't say it for any of them. And that why? Because the redhead, the more of a misfit, the youngest son was out in the fields. His name happened to be David, and Jesse was ashamed of him. So he kept him out in the fields doing what he was doing. And God literally had to rebuke Samuel. And he said, Samuel, God does not look as man looks on the outward appearance. God judges the heart. And it was this like, boom, like crazy profound moment that I would say most of the Bible hinges on when it comes to like how God sees. He doesn't look at the external appearance. He's not looking at the superficial. He's not interested in you striving and trying to figure out how you can gain this or gain that. He's looking at your heart. And for some of you, that's really good news because no matter how much you've struggled, your heart is pure and you desire life and you desire light. And for those of you that have numbed out and you are still on the broad path, I would just say there's a better way. And I would just say like, don't wait because life is so beautiful. It's so rich. It's so worth it. Like go deep, go inside, hear your own voice, jump off, start the adventure, talk to Maggie.
And the thing is that not all is lost. Just because you haven't started doesn't mean that it can't start. I remember one of the things that I put down when we had this exercise at Vanessa's expansion is that I felt like I was too old, like I was catching up, like I should have known all this. But you know what? I mean, even if I started this at 70, this still would have been an incredible journey. We're starting. I mean, it's better to have loved for 10 minutes than to never have loved at all. Um, so wherever you are in your journey, going deep, and once you find that first person to go deep with, you'll see how the energy around you will shift and how it'll invite other people. You'll just start looking at people and at life differently. And all of a sudden, you'll see things changing and the right people will be brought before you so that you could advance and change and grow and love differently. And do not be afraid to walk away from the people that lack love and rob you of love.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yes, 100%. See, I feel like I knew you were an artist. And I even think I know I called you a philosopher when I first interviewed you. And it's like when someone is an artist, which means they're kind of like giving the world the art that only they can. That's kind of what they're releasing into the world. You recognize when you see other artists. It's like originals recognizing other originals. But like counterfeits are just vying for value and worth. Hey, look, don't I look like I'm the real thing? It's like, yeah, but you're not. Just
Other
be the
people know.
original.
Yeah.
Yeah, just be the original that you are and rest in it. Like that's truly my message to everybody. Like you are more than enough. Um, I don't know, Maggie, do you want to do something that's lighter? Like, so, okay, how about this? So there's this interesting tension, I think, between someone that is capable, and I remember always thinking this paradox of you being very excellent, you being very capable. Um, you're Polish,
Hmm.
so like, culturally, high expectations, high standards, low margin of error. There's this excellence. We do things a certain way, and you are excellent. You're great at hitting the target or exceeding the bar. So that's where there's this paradox of yes, but if I let this become my identity, then when I do have an issue where I struggle or a failure that could be a moral failure, I don't know how to reconcile it because I'm so capable of reaching good outcomes on my own. And that's where it's like, I think it's even more difficult to just kind of have it settled. Like, you can be great, you can do excellent things. But that's not what gives you value. That's not what gives you inherent worth. That's not what gives you a sense of belonging. It's not because you are able to exceed it's not that you're able to, be part of the AGD because you finally made it. Like those things don't bring you value. They're great, and I think they're wonderful. I think people should accomplish and strive to have as much impact as they possibly can. But we're not measured by our impact. We're
Don't
not
ask me to set
measured.
up an iPhone.
No. Do you struggle with technology?
I suck.
But you got this really cool mic to work. Congratulations, or sorry, compliments, and let's call out to Chad Johnson.
Chad Johnson, thank you for this wonderful mic. But it only took about 10 minutes to figure out how to make it work. And it probably would have taken everybody else. No, but your point is well taken, right? What do
But
you gain?
the temptation would be like, because I'm able to achieve, and like it's easy to conflate. Well, that's what makes me special, or significant, or worthy of love, and that it's like, no,
That
don't
and it's
conflate
not
that.
real.
Right.
That's not real. And the reason why you know that that's not real is because of the way that you feel. When I connect with another human being, which is my gift, um,
One
my
of your gifts.
I think I think my biggest gift is writing. I really do. Um, my other gift, which I really love to do now, is being on stage. There is a feeling that comes with it, and then human connection. Um, Despite the fact that I say that I really don't like people, but that's a whole different podcast. There's a feeling that you get when you are living your truth and when you are living God's purpose, not your purpose, God's purpose. Those are two different things. And sometimes you have to wait almost two-thirds of your life before you figure out what God's purpose is for you. Sometimes you're lucky and it comes sooner to you. But it's almost like, I don't know if you're going to consider this to be blasphemous, but it's almost like walking on water when you are living God's purpose. And dentistry for me, even though I love dentistry, I really do. It's like a high for me. It is not God's purpose for me. These other these other three things are for me. And so, yes, you can take a tremendous amount of self-worth in the things that you have gathered, in the accolades and the achievements. And there's achievements in my writing and in my speaking also. But it's the act of. So it's in the act of writing and it's the act of speaking that I feel closest to God. Closest to God. And I remember the first time I felt that was when I was delivering a talk at Dental Nachos in 2023, in the summer of 2023. That was the closest I have felt to God in my life. And I was like, okay, I have to change my life to do more with this because I don't know what I was speechless.
But that's how you know,
That's how
because
you know.
it makes you come alive.
Yes.
Inherent in the gift that God's given you, there's this sense of aliveness, that I don't think you can get anywhere else. Again, there's little counterfeits here and there, but truly, when you experience it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what I was meant for. And then you get to shine, like I said, and in the image of the divine, which is so obvious. People know, like, you are a gifted writer, you are a gifted communicator. I have still not yet been able to see you on stage in person, right?
Expansion 25.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll circle March or April or May.
No,
Oh,
January.
expansion, January.
Expansion.
Oh, that's exciting.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that'll be unless well, yeah, I think that'll be the first 'cause I might see you in December in Phoenix, but I'm not speaking.
So Maggie, what do you think? How did you think you handled the? Did we even mention the forgiveness thing? Well, like, I mean, I think we
We
did,
talked
right?
about forgiveness.
Okay.
Wait, is this still part of the podcast or is this getting cut out?
No, no, this is still part of the podcast. This is just me rolling. We're still live. I'm just,
Um,
I'm not performing here. We're just
no,
chilling.
I think we no, I think we covered a lot about forgiveness. I think we covered a lot about self-blame, um, especially forgiveness in the eyes of God, being worthy of being forgiven. Um, we
Hey, so
don't.
it might be uncomfortable for you, but can I just honor you for like going where it's hard to go? Like, thank you. I don't know if you could have done that a decade ago. I don't know how long it's
I
been
couldn't have.
now.
I don't know that I could have done it a year ago. And my biggest worry is my daughter. And so I think we're getting closer and closer the more visible I become. And the older she gets and the more she gets on social media. And it's not just her because it's her friends too that are now, trying to be friends with me and on Instagram you don't become friends. People can just, go into your Instagram. Um, I think we're getting closer and closer to needing to have that conversation with her. And last summer or last spring, we had to make a call to her friend's parents that her friend was thinking about suicide. I mean, these things are getting, these days are difficult.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's had some introductions and she's had and I did not want to have children for a very long time. And part of the reason why I didn't want to have children is because I did not want to pass this on. And so when she was in second grade, I was a wreck because I thought any day now, any day now, any day now, she's going to want to kill herself. So she does have anxiety. She does not have depression,
Mm.
and she's 14. Um, she's on the spectrum. She might have something that they used to call Asperger's, although we haven't followed through with the testing, and she's diagnosed as ADHD. But she's doing great. She's thriving. She's a good kid. She doesn't like me right now, but she's 14. Um,
Maggie, if someone wants to just reach out to you privately, maybe because there's some stigma around their struggle or whatever, how would you want someone to reach you?
I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. My website is maggieaugustyn.com, but my email address is on there. Dr. Maggie, DrMaggie at myhappytooth.com. Facebook or Instagram messages on those I also go through almost daily. So any of those ways would be easy.
I was telling Maggie before we started that I was a little scared. She's like, why? And it's just because I don't know where a conversation is going to go when I talk to Maggie either. Just because, um, yeah, like I don't know. It's so easy in the podcasting world for people to huddle around topics that have to do with anything, personal development, practice growth if you're in dentistry, and that's all good and fine. Um, but it's like to be able to bring a topic forward that's just refreshing, even if a part of it was heavy or challenging for people to hear. Um, you know, I hope it was just encouraging. Um, if there's any way we can be there for you and you are struggling. Um, I don't like the fact that some people struggle and they feel alone. I don't like truly from the bottom of my heart. That is the hardest thing. So if that is you, please reach out to me. Please reach out to Maggie, because this message may not resonate with a lot of people that are just doing great, and that's awesome. But for those, even if it's just one person, that's like, I really needed to hear that. And if that is you, let us know, because you know I don't know, even just to honor Maggie and her bravery and her courage. Really, like I admire so much the liberation that you walk in, the power that you wield with your words and your presence and your transparency for the benefit of others. Wow. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for not filtering, not watering it down, not faking it. I know you never do. But yeah, Maggie, thank you for joining me in the sandbox today.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.